Pranam, Jai Jinendra. Let's start with the prayers. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loye Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano, Mangalanancha Sabvesim Padmam Havai Mangalam, Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loye Sabba Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Mangalanancha Sabbesim Padmam Havai Mangalam Namo Arihantanam Namo Siddhanam Namo Ayariyanam Namo Vajjayanam Namo Loye Sabba Sahunam Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Mangalanancha Sabbesim Padmam Havai Mangalam Veera Sarasura Surendra Mahito Virambuda Sansrita Virena Bhiyata Swakarma Nichayo Viraya Nityam Namah Veera Tirthamidam Pravtamatulam Veera Shigoram Tapo Veera Sri Dhruti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Veerabhadram Disa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manovrutti Parshanath Sri Estuvaha Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manovrutti Parshanath Sri Estuvaha Mangalam Bhagwan Viro Mangalam Gautam Prabhu Mangalam Stulibhadradia Jaina Dharmostu Mangalam Anguthe Amrutavase Laptitana Bandar Sri Guru Gautam Samariye Manavanchita Fadadatar. You're back after a couple of weeks break. You had a very good session with what is the name? Malti Ben from Srimad Rajchandra Mission and
Minal Ben.
Minal Ben. Sorry, Bharatbhai. Thank you. Minal Ben from she's from the Srimad Rajchandra Mission, isn't it? She's
Yes.
Yeah. So the topic was practical spirituality. I'm sure those of you who attended found a lot to think about. As you all probably remember, our ongoing topic on Nav Tatva, we have briefly discussed Ajiv, and we spent a lot of time on discussing Jeev, and we spent a few sessions on Ajiv. We briefly covered Punya Tattva, and this week we were going to cover Pap Tattva. But before we start with further discussions, let me just outline and bring back all of us to the context of our study of Nav Tattva. The study of Nav Tattva forms the fundamental grounding on Jain Dharma's philosophy, and it lays the groundwork for our understanding of our true nature and our relationship with the world outside, and how we should view ourselves and our connection with the world outside to make sure that we, meaning the soul, has got the clear template of understanding of what is good for its emancipation and an understanding of what is bad for it, but also understand everything that is within the universe as described by our Kevli Bhagwans, Tirthankar Paramatmas, when the fourfold path or the Tirth was established, and we have been learning about that subsequently from our Guru Bhagwans. Now, the whole focus of studying Nav Tatva is to prepare the groundwork, prepare ourselves for our own happiness and emancipation. And the purpose of religion is for us to find the happiness that is there within all of us. It's very important to remember that context constantly, not just with respect to this particular topic, but with every other topics that we have studied so far, because the focus is always towards what is good for the soul, what will help you achieve your ultimate goal, that is moksha, and how do we prepare for it? What are the conditions that will hinder your progress? What are the conditions that will ensure that your spiritual progress is smooth? What are the things that may actually enable you to move smoothly, but what are the barriers that will actually throw you from life after life like a yo-yo? And what are the danger situations which can throw us very far away into sansar and make it very difficult for us to come back to any further understanding or any further situation that will enable our progress or the progress of the soul to proceed. So all the stories that we hear about, everything that we learn in Jain Dharma is all focused on preparing us, of making sure that we understand this properly and we incorporate this into life. Now, if you reflect back on everything that we've studied over the last couple of years since we started these classes, and if you listen to our Guru Bhagwans and all the other classes, discourses, pravachan, vachanas that are available, then almost always the core message is this: who are you? What is your ultimate goal? And where is your happiness? And how do you achieve that? When we talked about punya, we are talking about, so punya and pap are both included in the next tattva that we'll be discussing, that is ashrav, that is the influx of karma. We'll be discussing that ashrav, and we'll also be discussing bandh in the same context. But the influx of karma, good karmas, which will give you the right environment or the facilities that would enable you to progress spiritually. So, good circumstances that make it easier in material terms for you to lead a trouble-free life, but also where you retain your awareness of the real importance of things for your soul. As we discussed with some examples, that if you get a lot of material happiness, but your focus is on enjoying that material happiness or holding on to the wealth that you have been fortunate enough to accumulate as a result of punya, then your ultimate journey will be downwards. Because if you continue to value materials, wealth, physical pleasures, enjoyment over the true happiness that exists within the soul, and if our value system is flawed, then no matter how much good we do, the ultimate result of that will be our ongoing continuation in life after life without reaching the point that gets us on the path to moksha. Pap Tattva that we are briefly going to discuss today is those karmas which will give us painful or uncomfortable situations. It will make it difficult for us to have some stability and peace in life. It may ensure material poverty. It may ensure births in lives where predominantly there is pain and suffering, like Tiryanch and Narak. It will ensure that our awareness of ourselves remains limited. So these are all the consequences of Pap Tattva. What are the reasons of Pap? Most of you would have heard and probably remember that during Pratikraman we recite what is called Adar Pap Sthanak. पहले प्राणातिपात, बीजे मृषावाद, त्रीजे अदत्तादान, चौथे मैथुन, पांचवें परिग्रह, छठे क्रोध, सातवें मान, आठवें माया, नौवें लोभ, 10वें राग, 11वें द्वेष, 12वें कलह, 13वें अप्याख्यान, 14वें पैशून्य, 15वें रति अरति, 16वें पर परिवाद, 17वें मृषावाद एंड 18वें मिथ्यात्व शल्य. These are the 18 papsthanaks, or the 18 actions, thoughts, words, deeds that would ensure that we accumulate or we attract bad karmas, and that which will ultimately give us more pain, less awareness of ourselves, and hinder our spiritual progress. In very brief, that is the essential message. But in the discussion about Pap Tattva, the Nav Tattva Prakarana divides it into 82 different sections. It says Papna Vyasi means 82 Bhednu Kostak, so a chart. It says Gnana Varniya. There are 5 different types of Gnan, and that karma that obstructs each one of them, that Gnana Varniya karma, is a Prakruti of Pap. Darshana Varniya karma, there are 9 Prakrutis of that. Mohniya karma, there are 26 prakrutis of that. Antaray karma, there are 5 prakrutis of that. So in total, these are the 4 ghati karmas: Gnanavarniya, Darshanavarniya, Mohni, and Antaray. And in total, they have 45 different prakrutis that are considered under the heading of pap. Then the aghati karmas, there is Vedaniya karma, and there are 2 types there: Sata Vedaniya and Asata Vedaniya. Asata Vedaniya is that karma that will give you the experience of displeasure, of pain, of suffering. That is Asata. Sata means comfort. Asata Vedaniya karma. But there is the other side of that coin called Sata Vedaniya, which gives you the experience of pleasure, of peace, of general level of happiness. That is Sata Vedaniya karma. That is not included in the Pap Prakruti or Pap Tattva. Ayushya karma, there is only one category in here, and we'll briefly discuss the reason for that. The verse Ayushya, where there is only pain and suffering, is Narak Ayushya. So life in Narak, there is not a moment of peace or happiness in there. So almost entirely, or not almost, but definitely entirely, a life as a Narak Jeev is only pain, pain, and pain. So therefore, that is considered to be a Pap Prakruti. However, the other Ayushya karma of Narak, of Devlok, of Manushya, and as Tiryanch has some element of pleasure and enjoyment. So it is not completely as a result of pap, but obviously the life as one sensed being is no walk in the park. But if you are an animal, 5 sensed animal, then there are moments of pleasure. And as other insects and other so 4 sense, 3 sense, 2 sense, there may be some elements of some pleasure. So they are not considered to be entirely as a result of pap. Gotra karma, meaning your status in society. There are 2 types, Nich Gotra and Uch Gotra. Nich Gotra is considered to be a pap prakruti. And Nam karma, there are many different prakrutis of that, but 34 of those are considered to be pap prakruti. And uh, we'll come to some more detail on all these when we discuss karma in greater detail. But before we start discussing karma, I'll have to lay the groundwork of the nature of karma. We briefly mentioned that, but the rules that govern the formation of karma, the destruction of karma, and the different types of karma, we'll discuss that in a bit more detail. So we'll probably spend about 4 or 5 weeks on that topic, and we might sort of start that uh, after Paryushan. As I mentioned last week, Sandeep has been asking me how many more weeks we want to continue with this topic. If you are willing, all of you, and if you are keen, then we can take much longer. But if you would like a change in a different topic, maybe go to something with a bit more uh, stories attached to that, then we can take a different topic and finish this in brief. But I'll wait for your feedback on that. We still got a fair amount to cover. But depending on how keen you are, we can extend that over several uh, weeks or months. I mean, traditionally, if you were to sit down to study Nav Tatva, one could spend every day for a couple of years to study it properly. So, in brief, the 18 pop sthanaks and these different prakrutis that you just mentioned are what is included in the pop tattva. And the consequences of pop in terms of how it affects the soul, in addition to how we experience our situations in life. So, if a disease suddenly strikes and we suffer as a result of that, that is asata vedaniya. If we lose a large amount of our accumulated wealth suddenly or over a period of time, then that is as a result of the onset of pop of some nature. So everything that happens to us where we are in difficulties, where we suffer anxiety, pain, suffering of any kind, worries, all those are the result of pop that we would have accumulated in a previous lives, and it has come to fruition in this particular life because the time for that karma to come into fruition has arrived, and the situations arrange themselves in that manner to give us that particular experience. Maybe we can look at some examples of that. I mean, we've already discussed several examples in the stories that we have learnt from Bhagwan Mahavir's life. But in the context of what we are talking now, does anybody want to maybe mention one of the stories from Bhagwan Mahavir's life where a particular pap tattva came into fruition, a previously accumulated pap, the consequences of which Bhagwan Mahavir suffered in his life as Bhagwan Mahavir? We discussed this particular um, incident that I'm thinking about, but there may be others that you all know as well.
Ajitbhai, was it one of the in his past lives where he was a king and he loved music, where he asked the guards to stop the music once he's fallen asleep?
Yeah.
And they didn't until the morning, and he poured oil on them or something. So in Mahavir Bhagwan's life, where he was Kausagma ત્યારે એના કાનમાં પણ તેલ તેલ નાખ્યું કે was it ઓલા
Yeah, so
ખીલાના?
yeah, so that was the Bhagwan Mahavir's life as Triprushta Vasudev. So he was a Vasudev, like the emperor of the three continents of Bharat Kshetra. In that life, as you said, he had a great love of music, and his musicians had a standing instruction and were instructed every time that when they were playing, if he fell asleep, then they should stop the music so that his sleep would not be disturbed. Once one of the head musicians, they got so engrossed in the experience of the music that they forgot to switch off to notice that Triprushta Vasudeva had gone to sleep or had fallen asleep and carried on playing, and the sound obviously woke up Triprushta Vasudeva, and he was very angry and upset, and he punished the head musician with the word that you really like music, don't you? And then let me ensure that your ears are punished. So he pours molten, or he gets his people to pour molten lead into this musician's ears. That obviously would have destroyed his ears, but that would have possibly taken his life as well. That particular karma came into fruition when this Gowal, or this cow herd, seeing Bhagwan Mahavir standing there during his sadhana kal in Kausag meditating. He is there with his cows, and he has some business in the town nearby, and he wants somebody to look after his cattle. And seeing this person standing there, he thinks that he is not going to go away anywhere, and he gives him instructions, even though Bhagwan Mahavir is in meditation, is quiet, is not responding to it. He says that I am going to the town, I'm leaving my cows around here. Can you please look after them? And since Bhagwan Mahavir doesn't respond, he assumes that he's understood, and that is what he's going to do. Bhagwan Mahavir is obviously deep in meditation, and he has no interest, or no, that is not his job to look after the cattle. And the cattle wander about and go deeper into the forest in search of more grass. And by the time the Gowal comes back, none of the cows and cattle are there. So he asks Bhagwan Mahavir, where are they? What have you done with them? Obviously, again, Bhagwan Mahavir is not responding. The Gowal gets really upset and angry, and he keeps on asking. Bhagwan Mahavir is not responding. And he goes out searching for his cattle, spends a lot of time looking around, but he can't find them. And he gets so upset and angry that he says, you seem to be deaf, or you don't seem to be hearing. I'm going to punish you. And he finds two pieces of wood, fashions them into wooden nails, and hammers them into each ear. That obviously would have been extremely painful for Bhagwan Mahavir, but he doesn't utter a cry or doesn't respond, knowing that all that is happening is as a result of his past karma. And the Goal, or the Gopal, uh, is not at fault at all. He is just an instrument of torture that his karmas have attracted, and he remains silent. The Goal gets tired of waiting, and after some time, all his cattle actually come back, because that is what they've been trained, that if once they start roaming about, they will return to the place that they left. They know that the Gowal is going to take them home, so they all return. And so it was actually a non-incident, but this Gowal got very upset and angry. And this Gowal was in fact the soul of that musician that Bhagwan Mahavir's soul in the life as Triprushta Vasudev had tortured for a minor mistake. So that came into fruition. Now, that was several lifetimes ago. So just some points on karma. When we bind a karma, unless a karma is extremely serious and terrible, most karmas do not necessarily come into fruition immediately. They may not come into fruition in that life or in several lives afterwards as well. So it may be a long time for those karmas to stay dormant. And we'll come to the details of what those rules are. It's called actually sthiti bandh, means how long will this karma stay in hibernation until it comes into fruition. What kind of karma is it going to be? So what particular virtue of the soul will the karma obstruct? So if in this case it was an asata vedaniya karma, the soul's true nature is an experience of permanent bliss or absolute bliss, where there is no experience of pain and pleasure, but just joy and joy and joy, which is totally independent. But in this case, that basically asata vedaniya karma came into fruition and gave Bhagwan Mahavir the experience of extreme pain. The pain of the insertion of the nails in the ears was one level of pain, and Bhagwan Mahavir then roams about with those nails sticking out. He is not making any effort to do anything about that or seek help. But when he goes to the towns and villages to seek alms after he completes his meditation, there is a person out there who is a qualified Vaid, a doctor. He looks at Bhagwan Mahavir's face and recognizes that he is in extreme pain, though he's not saying anything. And then, as a physician, he is looking for the possible reason for this, what he can actually see on Bhagwan Mahavir's face and his demeanor. Now, we must remember that the Bhagwan Mahavir is not crying, he is not asking, his suffering is evident on his face, but he is not complaining. And then when this physician looks at, he sees these two wooden nails sticking out of his ears and then realizes what it is. And then he finds somebody from the village who can bring a kind of pliers or sansi to help pull out the ears. And then where Bhagwan Mahavir next goes after finishing his rounds in the town and village to seek alms. Uh, when Bhagwan Mahavir goes back, the physician and this luhar or follows him, and they make the necessary arrangements to ensure that Bhagwan Mahavir does not, his suffering is minimized. And then the luhar actually pulls out the nails one by one. And this particular pulling out was, in fact, more painful than the hammering of the nails inside the ears. And this was the only time that Bhagwan Mahavir involuntarily cries out, and the scream that he utters at that moment is so strong, it's reputed that it actually it cracked a mountain nearby. And there is such a place there where there is a temple nearby. I think it's somewhere in Bihar. And we've been there a few years ago, that you can actually see that the mountain is cracked there. So it's reputed to be that place where Bhagwan Mahavir was. So this karma stayed in abeyance for this many years and came into fruition. So this was an experience of pap karma that gave extreme displeasure. But there are other kinds of karmas that will obstruct the particular ability of the soul to know, meaning Gnana Varniya Karma, and there are different kinds of activities that will generate Gnana Varniya Karma. So disrespecting knowledge, disrespecting the givers of knowledge, disrespecting our Guru Bhagwans, and disrespecting the instruments of knowledge. So that's why we teach our children, ensure that you don't put your foot on any paper or on any books, and respect knowledge. In always respect your teachers. So those are the reasons why we teach respect for knowledge. Similarly, there are different aspects of acquiring pap, similarly as acquiring punya. Of the Adar Pap Sthanak, shall we concentrate to begin with? Most of you know the names of the 18 Pap Sthanak. There is only one which is described as Salya. Which one is that?
The last one, yeah, sure.
Salya. What does Salya mean?
I can't explain. I'll wait for you to explain.
Okay.
It would be good to explain all the other Papsanak.
Yeah, we'll come to that at some stage, but obviously there are many here who know what Salya means. Bharatbhai, Shilaben all know. A Salya is basically a thorn. Salya means that which pricks. And Mithyatva Salya, the term Mithyatva is emphasized by saying that it is Salya, meaning that is the most important pap. What is Mithyatva? What does the word mithya mean?
It's the wrong belief.
Okay.
The soul and the body are two different entities.
Yeah. The wrong belief of our true nature, the wrong belief of where our emancipation lies, the wrong belief of the entities that are the right entities to worship, the right gurus to follow, the right path to follow. So all kinds of mistakes or misunderstanding in any of these contexts is the basis of, or is mithyatva. And when the soul acquires a level of clarity from all these wrong beliefs, it slowly progresses towards a state where it is nearing the acquisition of the greatest step or process in the journey of the soul towards moksha, and that is called samyaktva. So samyaktva is the opposite of mithyatva. Mithyatva retains its influence because of mohniya karma. So you may have heard the term that the king of karmas is mohniya karma. Mohniya karma, when we go into the details of how the 8 karmas are described, mohniya karma is described as what? How is it sort of, what sort of situation is it compared with? Gnanavaraniya karma is compared with a blind person, with somebody who's got a cloth over his eyes, therefore cannot see. Darshanavaraniya karma is described as somebody who guards the doors to the palace and will not allow you to go and see the king when you want to. So it's like a darwan, it obstructs your uh, ability to visualize or to understand or to see the king. So darshanavaraniya. Avaraniya means that which obstructs. Gnan avaraniya, darshanavaraniya. So that is what? How is Monia described?
Attachment?
No, I mean, there are different descriptions. I mean, Bharat Bhai, Sheila-ben, do you want to, or Asmukh Bhai?
Monia karma is described as somebody who is under the influence of alcohol, meaning to say that he's not going to have the right perception of anything, and is not going to have the right views and hence the right knowledge and right conduct.
Absolutely. So, and it's very important to understand this because we find it difficult to, find it difficult to actually get to the depth of what these descriptions and the comparisons actually mean. But all our knowledge comes from great, all of it comes from our Tirthankar Paramatmas and our Gandhar Bhagwans, and the descriptions that are used to describe them to us are absolutely apt. Sometimes we do not necessarily understand the full extent of that comparison, but being misguided, being confused, being unaware, seeing something entirely different. So if a drunkard person is walking on the road, his sense of balance is disturbed. Not all drunkards. Some people say that they can tolerate alcohol very well, but even those have a significant impairment of their normal faculties. So there is a loss of sense of balance. What else does a drunk person do? He forgets where he lives. Not all of them, but a drunk person may stand on a door that looks like his house and keep on ringing the bell, thinking that that is where he lives. And when somebody else opens the door, he may not recognize that that is not his home. And if a different person than he expects turns up, he may believe that he is right, that he's at the right house, but somebody else has actually occupied his house and may try and get rid of that person. So all the situations that you can think about that a drunkard person may do, we actually, under the influence of Monia karma, are actually acting them out on a daily basis. When we are under the influence of Monia karma, so if we have the power of Mithyatva Monia that is engulfing our soul, we lack the true understanding of our true nature, and we do not have the peace and the experience of the knowledge of ourselves. So our every reaction to our situation is basically reacting to the particular instrument of that situation, not the actual reason for that situation. So I've given this example before. If a dog is barking and somebody gets angry and throws a stick at the dog bites the stick because the dog considers the stick to be the reason or the enemy. If a lion is in front of us and we throw a large stick at him, will he ignore the stick or will he actually start biting the stick like the dog? I mean, there may be intelligent dogs as well, but this is an example of just general behavior. But a lion is considered to be somebody who is a greater discerning power. He knows what is right and what is wrong. So he sees the stick as just an instrument. He is not going to concentrate on the stick. He's going to concentrate on whoever has thrown that stick. And because of our misunderstanding, all our reactions in life are trying to correct the situation by sorting out the extraneous situations that accompany that particular experience, not realizing that all this is due to the result of our past karmas. And we particularly make that mistake when our experience is pleasurable. So when we achieve something, when we win something, when somebody praises us, we feel proud because we say, okay, I'm somebody great, I've achieved something. And in that process, we are forgetting that even that is a gift of our previous punya karma. But my true nature, none of this should matter to me. And it is that core of that knowledge that is really the focus of all that we study. And we keep on coming back to that because I am hoping that by the end of these classes, we settle down to a level of firm understanding and belief of this core knowledge and start our practice to begin to experience that knowledge. So knowledge in terms of knowing what is right and wrong is not necessarily considered to be that important unless it translates into experience. So, I mean, it's a very important stepping stone. You can't transcend into an experience of that particular distinction between the soul and the body. It's called Bhed Gnan, meaning you experience that separateness. But to experience that separateness, first you got to understand that they are separate. But then that is not enough. You got to progress, and that requires a lot of personal effort, a lot of following the principles of dharma, of ensuring that we keep on listening and we carry on meditating on what we learn. And that is a daily practice. So we got a lot of people here who actually have incorporated that in their daily routine. So people like Bharat, I know for sure, spends a huge amount of time constantly revising all these things so that the awareness becomes second nature. And that is the practice that ultimately we are all aiming for. And I'm hoping that we can set the groundwork for that. Okay. So that in very brief was about Pap Tattva is this general context of Punya Tattva, laying the groundwork for Ashrav and the discussion on the 8 karmas and the rules governing the formation of karmas, etc. There's just one thing that I wanted to address, Hasmukh, towards the end of the last lesson 2 weeks ago. There's one particular statement that you made that I have kept on thinking over the last 2 weeks, and I just wanted to clarify certain things. So the situation that was described, and my answer to that situation was that if we have wealth and we don't actually spend it, but it doesn't mean anything to us, giving it away, and I was saying that it is a higher state for it to have no value and not consider it of any importance at all. But in terms of restricting our activities, it is very important to remember that if we say that the wealth that we have accumulated, even if we don't give it away, it is of no real importance to me. So we are restricting our activities of acquiring punya. But what we must remember is that, for example, when a monk who may be when he takes diksha, or monk or a nun, everything that they have possessed in their life as a sansari, they would give away whatever they can in that procession, which is called Varsidan, and that in effect is only a token, but all the other arrangements would have been made before. But in that process, what they're also discarding is any sense of possession of what was in their possession before, and they would take those steps of detaching mentally from everything that they owned before. And in that situation, whether it is left or not, they have no concern about that. So when somebody, after having taken Diksha, is approached by their family members 6 months later and says, look, we've just discovered that you had 100,000 pounds in an account that none of us remembered, but it is in your name. What do you want to do with that? We had forgotten about what we were going to do about that, and you have not left any instructions. What would that Muni Bhagwan's response be to that? Let me just phrase it a different way. So if I, on a personal level, am keeping tabs on all my accounts and investments and being careful where I spend and start worrying about the extra expenditure that certain things have incurred and get upset about some extra expenditure, even though I'm aware that there is plenty there which I can give away, but not having the necessary generosity to actually giving them away. All that is a result of labantrai, but also a sense of possessiveness that is called lobe. And one needs to be aware that when one does not consider the accumulated wealth of any importance, one needs to make sure that there isn't a subtle level of possessiveness of that. So when you're really talking about total aparigraha, that is a very different situation. And at some stage, we will discuss the stories of the 10 great Shravaks of Bhagwan Mahavir. Some of you who may be subscribing to WhatsApp group called of the Institute of Jainology from India, Dr. Kumar Palbhai Desai is writing very eloquently currently about the 10 great Shravaks of Bhagwan Mahavir. And in this context, learning about the lives of one or two of them would be very useful. In particular, people like Anand Shravak, Chulni Pita Shravak. So we'll come to that. But I just wanted to clarify that the importance of aparigraha is with respect to having a total sense of non-possessiveness. Okay. Hasmukh, I hope, I think I tried to cover that last time, but I just wanted to emphasize that again. Any questions on today's or any other topic?
Hello, Ajitbhai. This is Hasmukh here.
Hi, Hasmukh. Yeah.
That wasn't my question, actually. I hadn't asked that one. Wasn't me.
Okay. Someone
Okay.
asked about a couple of weeks ago.
I think it was somebody else. Yes, I remember that, what they had said.
Okay, so
Wasn't me.
apologies. Sorry. Right.
No. Okay. First thing I wanted to say was that you said earlier on people listening, following you, learning. I learned from the book club. There is somebody there actually at the end of the day, every day reflects on all the daily karmas that he may have committed.
Yeah.
And that was quite inspirational.
Wonderful.
I mean, okay, he went to like he went on to just for us not to be that excited about it, saying that doesn't mean that he's doing something about it, but he at least every day, at the end of the day, he actually reflects on that day and all the karmas that he may have bound in that day. So I thought that was really impressive. He's obviously practicing, like reflecting on the whole day's activities.
Yeah.
So that was very inspirational for me.
Yeah.
Okay, now have we finished the Pap Tattva today?
Yeah, because I covered it very briefly. There is a lot more, obviously, and then there is a lot more detail. And as I said, that we could spend a long time in discussing the various aspects of it. But
Well, I have a couple of questions. Well, a question that covers both, because in the punya we covered. I think we talked you talked quite a lot about punya nubandi punya and punya nubandi pap. Now, I wanted to see the papa nubandi punya and papa nubandi pap as well.
Okay.
So could you talk about that, please?
Yeah. Papanubandhi punya is that if one has acquired punya that brings wealth or material happiness. So, for example, if one has been very generous and that generosity has at the point of that particular action, thought, generated or attracted a lot of punya, and it is so powerful that that punya then accumulates and comes into fruition at a future life, and that punya will ensure that wealth is not an issue, that wealth is actually in that person's experience in a future life. However, if that particular action of that particular good deed that attracted that punya karma is then either mixed with regret in the future that, hang on, why did I do that? That person didn't deserve it, or what I've given away was so nice, I could have enjoyed it myself, and why did I give it away? Or he may do something good in a moment of generosity and then later on regret it. So, for example, we often come to this. We may have genuinely seen somebody's suffering, gone out of our way to help that person, and that person receives that help and is happy about it, but later on finds fault with what you did and begins to criticize you and goes as far as actually putting a court case against you. So, for example, and I'll give you a medical example because these are similar situations that do occur sometimes. Say a good Samaritan sees somebody in cardiac arrest and there's nobody, nothing else around, and he has got some training, jumps on this person, starts giving cardiac massage, and in the process, because he's trained, the person experiences a couple of or a few rib fractures, but does come around and is revived, and his heart starts beating again. He's alive. The ambulance crew come and say, look, whoever did this has done a good job. Your heart has started beating again and everything is fine. We don't need to shock you. Everything is okay. But we need to take you to the hospital. The person goes to the hospital. The doctors do the necessary tests, make sure he's not at a heart attack, and treat him appropriately, cover all the risk factors, and mention to him that in the process of the resuscitation, you have fractured about 3 or 4 ribs. That will take about 6 to 12 weeks to heal. There's nothing to worry about, but you will have some pain during that period. And this person goes back home, starts experiencing the pain, and forgets that he has recovered from a cardiac arrest or a potentially fatal condition, and keeps on getting very upset and angry about the constant pain that he's suffering from his fractured ribs. And he blames this person who did his cardiac resuscitation. And he lodges a complaint. He instructs his lawyers to sue this person for the pain and suffering that has been caused as a result of his fractured ribs. This person was instrumental in giving him those fractures. Now, that other person who did a cardiac massage on him in good faith then begins to regret. Why did I do this? I'm never going to do something like this. This is all wrong. This person is now, in fact, pursuing me and persecuting me and suing me for his fractured ribs, whereas, in fact, I did him a great turn and I probably saved his life. So that regret then changes that particular punya karma that would have been very powerful into something that produces in a future life a diluted form of punya. So he may have the effects of that karma, but he may not experience them to the full extent. And in fact, what it also changes is his psyche. His awareness of what is right and what is wrong is now contaminated. He is regretting what is right, and he's actually pushing forward mentally what is wrong. So that is Pap Anubandhi Punya. And the example that I gave last time was Maman Seth. Maman Seth donated his Prabhavna Sukhdi to Sadhu Bhagwant in his Gochri, and then later on tasted part of it that he had kept for himself and regretted the fact that he had given away such a nice piece of sweet to Muni Bhagwant and was upset that he had given it away. He was thinking that I should have been better off eating the whole thing myself. So he becomes selfish. So he accumulated punya karma that gave him enormous wealth. But that enormous wealth came at a very, very heavy price. He worked all his life as somebody who, to reduce the risk, engaged in completely non-risky, non-financially risky ventures. He went out into the river at night, collecting driftwood, bringing it back to the shore, drying it out, selling it, and that was his business. And he worked extremely hard throughout his life to accumulate all this wealth that he earned from this activity. And he bought diamonds, jewels, and he created metal buttons that, so he was so acquisitive, so greedy, but he couldn't spend any of his money. He, yeah.
But that example was for Punyanubandhi Pap. He had the
Punyanubandhi.
he had the punya, but he used that punya for Pap. So the return was Pap. So I think that I understand very well now, because we used Sali brothers example,
As the
Punyanubandhi Punya. Because of the punya, he he uh, he gave alms to, or the kir to the monk.
Yeah.
So he had the punya to get that opportunity, and by sacrificing what he really wanted, he built up more punya. So that was punya nubandhi punya. I understood that. That was fine. And then we had punya nubandhi pap. So he had the punya, but that punya, because of his greediness, got converted into pap. So that was for the punya side. My question was for the pap.
Papanubandhi Pap.
First of all, would be papanubandhi punya, which means that we are committing pap. Although we are committing pap now, but that pap, it depends. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming, like trying to understand the punya nubandhi punya and punya nubandhi pap, that the pap we may be committing now is, although you're committing the pap, but maybe with what the bhav is or something like that, it turns into punya. It gave that pap, actually the rewards are punya. Future rewards are punya. And the other bit is, you are doing pap now, although you're committing pap now, and your bhav is that you are so happily doing that pap, that your future, the rewards are going to be pap as well. And I think that's what I was trying to understand that.
Okay. So Maman Seth's, so Salibhadra's actions were Punyanubandhi Punya.
Yeah.
He acquired a punya. He committed a punya, and as a result of that, he got enormous wealth and great punya. So that's Punyanubandhi Punya.
Yeah, I understood that.
Maman Seth performed an act of punya by giving away that sukhdi. So he is actually giving away sukhdi, and ultimately that punya that is acquired leads him into a life of extreme miserliness and ultimately narak. So that is pap anubandhi punya.
No, I don't, sorry. He had the punya because he he had the punya, so he got all that wealth.
So,
And okay, sorry, he got the wealth. That was one side, but I think the main punya was that he gave the sweet to the monk. But that giving the sweet to the monk was an act of punya.
yeah,
But having done that, he regretted it. So the bhav was of regret. The bhav, not, it wasn't like with that Salibhadra, where he had done the kid with so much bhav that he was happy. He didn't keep even a little bit for himself. He gave it all to the monk. So that was the bhav, that the reward was more punya. This one, the act was punya, but the bhav, because it was the regret that turned that punya into pap. So in future, it was pap, and because of that pap, the activities, the activities he did, he became very greedy, and I think it was that greed that sent him to Narak because of that pap. So
Yeah.
I think that was covered
Yeah.
with the punya tattva. But
so that is
focusing on the pap tattva, again we have two things. We have papanubandhi punya. Although we are doing pap, the reward will be punya. The next at present, whatever action we're doing, our action is pap, direct pap, but we get punya from it.
Yeah.
So from that, I mean, it is interesting that although you're committing pap, so the only way I see it is that your bhav must be so great in doing that pap that it actually, the reward is punya.
Yeah.
And the other one is the bhav, that you are actually committing pap, but your bhav must be of wanting to commit that, that you must be actually happy, enjoying. I think it's like Shrenik Raja's story. When he killed the deer, he said, Ek tire beshikar. He was happy. So that sent him to Narak. That was like, so that's what I'm saying is papa nubandi pap.
Yeah. No, you're right. And the Papanubandhi
Punya
Punya,
is one, and then papa nubandi pap.
Papanubandhi Pap. So Anubandh is what you subsequently reap, and act itself is, so Punyanubandhi Pap. So you commit a wrong act, but your bhav, as you just said, is very positive and you are regretting what you've done. So in fact, you are actually accumulating punya tattva in that particular action. So punyanubandhi pap. So you may
No. I think we're getting confused. Punyanubandhi pap is I think is the Maman Shed story, because he had the punya to give that thing to the monk.
Maman said was his anubandh was that of pap.
Yeah, but the punya, it was the punya. Initially, it was the action made him take. It was his punya that made him take that action of giving the sukhi or the sweet to the monk. Yeah, so that was the punya. But because I think the illustration shows us that he regretted giving the sweet, which obviously turned into pap. So I think punya, I'm really clear about that now. It's really, I've understood it well. The other bit now, because there are two tattvas, one tattva is punya, the other tattva is pap. So what I'm saying is, as we have in punya no bandi punya and punya no bandi pap, that's to do with punyas. Now this one is papa no bandi. So the starting point is pap. Both of them. The second, well, this one, that's what I was saying, that we hadn't heard this bit. The starting point is pap, but the result is punya. Starting point is pap, and the result is pap.
You see, the term anubandh, Bharatbhai, yes, you want to?
Sorry, can I just come in between? I think there's quite a bit of confusion. You must remember one thing, that when you say uh, uh, Papanubandhi Punya, that means when your Uday, that means you are bearing the fruits of Punya, and at the same time you are acquiring Pap because of your bad actions at that time. but your fruit, you are bearing the fruits of punya. You have good uday in action at that time. However, even in that uday, you are binding pap. That is papa nubundi punya. And a good example there would be, you know, uh, Rohini Ochor. Rohini Ochor was born was or even Arjun Mali. He was at the time he was doing wrong things. Means he was involved in thefts, and because he was born into that sort of that kind of family. However, even in those bad circumstances that he was born into, he realized that by following the right path, which he got through uh, when well it's a long story, but to sort of keep it short, I mean he was doing bad acts. However, he listened to Mavi Prabhu's deshna by mistake, because he had to take his fingers out of his ears, and he just listened to Mavi Prabhu's deshna, and he just remembered that, and that in turn uh, prevented him from being hanged by Shanik Raja's son. Now, the fact that he was in ઉદય પાપનો હતો, પણ એ પાપના ઉદયમાં પણ એનું અનુબંધ એનું અનુબંધ પુણ્યનો હતો. Therefore, he acquired, he went into the right path, even going against the wishes of a family, and he went to, Devlok, and ultimately, he's going to get Kevagnan, or he's already got Kevagnan. You must remember two things here. When you say Punya, Punya Nubandi Pap, your Pap is your Uday at that time. That means he is doing bad things at that time, but even doing bad things, he's realized that somewhere along the line he's going wrong, and he changes himself and acquires punya. That is punya nubandi pap.
No, Bharat. I think we're confusing. Punya, leave aside punya. Here we've got the starting point has to be pap for both activities. And the story you've just given me, I've understood now. It's the Robin Hood story. Robin Hood was stealing from the poor to give to the rich. So although he was committing a pap, the end result was punya. It was because it was done in good faith. He wasn't doing it for himself. He was committing that pap to help the poor people. That's the Robin Hood story. So now that is following. Now I have understood that, and I'm really clear about that now, because it's distinct. Because like the tattvas, one tattva is the punya tattva, the other tattva is pap. Now punya tattva, we covered that. I understood that, because as I said already, both of them starting point is punya, and when the first example was punya, pap. Now the next bit is pap, punya, pap, pap. So this example you gave, I've followed. Now, based on what you've just said to me, what I now understand, the way I understand it, and the way I understand it is papanubandhi pap. So you're committing an activity which is definitely pap, but if you are saying, I think like when this training, I don't know if that's appropriate, but that I've understood that you're committing a pap, but you're so happy that you have committed that pap, so the end result is going to be pap. So yes, so that's pap by committing, on one hand, committing pap, but the intention was good, so you get, in future you're going to get punya. The other side is you've committed a pap, but the intention was to commit the pap, whatever it was, you were very happy doing that wrong thing. So obviously, that is going to be pap. So the future, the reward is going to be pap, and that is karma. So I think I have understood now.
Yeah. So I think from what Bharat has mentioned, there are sort of more strands to this conversation, and I won't confuse the issue more, but just a thought to be thinking about. Anubandh is about the propagation of that particular sequence or that particular series of events. When we say punya nu bandh, meaning it will progressively improve your punya. So Bharat mentioned about at the time of Uday. So when that karma comes into fruition, the consequences of experiencing the effects of that particular karma and what those consequences ultimately do to you. So in terms of the spiritual progress of the soul, so Salibhadra was not attached to his wealth. He could give it up. He became a monk, and his life progressed as his spiritual life progressed, and ultimately he's way ahead on the road to moksha. So that is the consequence of that one act of punya that brought him enormous wealth, but also it improved his spiritual situation in a way that actually made him understand the worthlessness of all external wealth and realize the value of internal wealth or the uh, all the goons of the soul itself. Maman Seth, on the other hand, did not value the so initially at the point of action, at the point of the first act, he valued the life of a Muni Bhagwant and was generous in giving it to him. He must have had this thought that there's a person with a great life and doing so much good, then I need to appreciate it and I will give this away to them. He felt very generous. So at that point, he acquired the punya, but at the moment that he regretted it, all that changed. And it converted into something that in fruition, so at the time of Uday, his subsequent experiences, the chain that it set out would be that his spiritual progress would become stationary there and will actually decline over a period of time. So therefore, his next life in Narak. So I think there are different strands that we need to understand as well. So one aspect is at the time of Uday, at the time of acquisition of that karma, and also the time of what the karma can change into subsequently as a result of how you view that particular action. So, Hasmukh, you gave the example of Shrenik Raja having killed the deer. He further compounded that by being proud. So, there is a time lag. He has killed a deer. He doesn't know what he has done in terms of uh, whether it is a pregnant deer or not. But when he reaches there, he sees that there is a calf in the womb as well. And instead of regretting that he has killed two lives with one arrow, he actually celebrates that fact. So he further compounds that action of violence by becoming more proud of it and celebrating that particular act. So the process was compounded. And it is at that point, so if he had stopped and regretted, then that pap karma would have been modified. but he didn't regret it, he celebrated it. So that pap karma became much more firm and solid and something that he couldn't shake. So all that process of what happens subsequent to a particular act is what we will discuss when we discuss the rules governing the formation of karmas and things like that. So I think, thank you very much both.
Thank you. I mean, I'm clear now because we saw one side and I was thinking about the other side, but now I'm very clear on the other side as well now.
But I mean, just as in context, it's useful to know that these terms are actually talking about a lot of different things as well in terms of context, current, future, the process itself. So that is what these terms are sort of mentioning. Okay, thank you all very much. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatmas and our Dharma Gurus, I ask for forgiveness. Jinagna virud kai pan bolyo ho, te sabi ho manuchan kaya kari, tasmichami dikudam, Saramangala Mangalyam, Sarakalyan Karanam, Pradhanam Saradharmanam, Jainam Jayati Sasanam.
Sorry, there's just one announcement to make. Next week's going to be our last class before Paryushan. Paryushan English Pratikama will also be held at Avanti House in Northwest London. And there's going to be a special session at Oshwal Centre Potters Bar on the 1st of September. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you all.
you.
Bye.
Jai Jinendra.
Jai
Jinendra.
Jinendra. Ajitbhai, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra.
Thank you, Ajitbhai. Thank you.